This is WRLYLP Raleigh.
From Feature Story News in Washington, D.C., I'm Benji Haya. America's democracy came dangerously close to catastrophe during the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th last year, according to the third in a series of congressional hearings investigating the insurrection. The leaders of the European Union's three largest economies, France, Germany and Italy, are backing Ukraine's bid to become a candidate for EU membership. And the family of a British journalist say they're heartbroken after his body was found in a remote region of the Amazon rainforest.
Brought to you by Triangle Access Broadcasting, here's a look at the weather in the Oak 93.5 listening area. For tonight, partly cloudy skies with a chance of scattered showers and thunderstorms, ending after midnight, low around 74. Friday, mostly sunny, hot and humid, with a chance of isolated afternoon thunderstorms. A few of these storms may be severe, high around 99. Friday night, partly cloudy with a chance of isolated thunderstorms, ending around midnight, low around 72. Saturday, sunny, becoming breezy and less humid, high around 89. And Saturday night, mostly clear skies, low around 60. Keep it here on Oak 93.5. I'm nowcast meteorologist Jim Vaughn.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're now tuned into Chat City with P. Ross. Conversations and interviews are in the queue. Listen or join in. Here she is, P. Ross.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you for tuning in into another version of Chat City with P. Ross. I am your host, P. Ross. And in the studio with me today, I am honored to have Chief of Police and Director of Public Safety for North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina, Chief Damon Williams, and also Elder Jaylen Allen of JAM, which stands for Jaylen Allen Ministries. He's also a former campus minister of North Carolina Central University. I thank you guys for coming in here with me today. It's a pleasure having you. All right. Now, as I stated in my last show, June is a busy month with a bunch of holidays, and we got Juneteenth coming up this month, or we have Juneteenth coming up on Saturday, June 19th. So happy Juneteenth. We have Father's Day. Let's give a house applause for Father's Day. Yes, we have Father's Day coming up. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. Early happy Father's Day, that is. And we are also in what is known as Black Music Month. And I stated that I will feature a artist each time that I am on in the month of June. The artist of the month for me, this is Time Mag. She was noted in Time Magazine as one of the most influential people in the world. She is a Chicago native. And she had an electrifying role in the musical Dreamgirls. She's also portrayed one of the greatest singers of our time, Miss Aretha Franklin. Gentlemen, do you know who I am referring to?
I think I do. I'm not sure.
You want to give it a shot?
Oh my God, I can see her face. I just can't remember her name.
I'm going to get it
Okay,
wrong. I'm going to get it wrong.
Right,
Jennifer Hudson.
yes,
Yeah,
Jennifer Hudson.
It took me a second.
I was going to give you a hint, another hint. She got her start on American Idol.
Yeah,
I was going to say.
Okay, that would have helped me out.
All right, so now I titled this our Strongman Show, Iron Strengthening Iron, because we have two very important people in our society, a police officer and a minister in our midst. And man, I mean, how stronger can you get than that? I mean, I'm sure we have other roles that are just as strong, but these two together I thought would be perfect, and especially around Father's Day, this time of year, to come together and have a chit-chat conversation on some of the things that are going on in the world today, and their advice, their opinions, and things we should do. All right, so as we get started today, I also want to note that I mentioned that both of these gentlemen have ties to North Carolina Central University. I purposely wore my red today, signifying Ram Power, Winston-Salem State University, since I was an attendant there. So I've got my Ram earrings on today, just letting them know, okay, I've got some Eagles in the house, but I don't mind blending in with you guys today, okay? I just had to mention that, all right? All right, Chief Williams.
Yes.
We have wonderful men, but it seems like a lot have fallen to the wayside for bad or for worse, especially in the Black community. Mm-hmm. What do you think has happened?
Well, I think a lot has happened. I think, this is a very systemic problem, right? So a very long-lasting problem. Mm-hmm. One, we've lost the fathers in the home. Mm-hmm. Is one. I'm a father myself. I have 3 kids. Mm-hmm. Some of my children's friends come from the same situation I do, which was a single-parent home without a father. But when you don't have a father in the home, you still need some type of role model, some type of male role model. A Black male needs a male role model at some point in time to help mold them. So even though I come from a single-family home or a single-parent home, my pastor at the time, Elder D.M. Sanders, was a role model for me. Okay. Was somebody who can mentor me. So I think a lot of our young men have lost that mentorship, because I look at my own son, now that he's 15, at a certain point in his life, without that strong male role model being myself to step in and say, hey, this is what we're going to tolerate and this is what we're not going to tolerate. Mm-hmm. I can see him going off the rails. But because I refuse to give up, I refuse to let him fall off the rails. I refuse to let him become a statistic, no matter what. I hold him accountable. Mm-hmm. I hold him to the responsibilities that I expect him to live up to, and I expect him to live up to the things that me and my wife have both seated in him. So I hold him accountable, right, mm-hmm. as a male. Uh-huh. And sometimes that involves having a very strong conversation with him about what's going to be acceptable and what's not. So there's a lot of different things. I mean, I can go on and on and on into the past about drug use in the community, the systemic racism. You can go into a lot of different things in this topic, but I do think having a lack of role models is one. And I tell people all the time. I say, listen. Especially when I'm talking to churches or I'm talking to church groups, I tell them all the time, I say, listen, y'all come in here every Sunday and pick up that armor of God, and when you leave it right there on the pew. Uh-huh. Instead of taking it out into the street and fighting to save some of our young men, right? I try to do it every day at North Carolina Central, along with the rest of my officers and staff, because we want to see our students succeed. So I think that role models and mentorship is something that's lacking.
I agree. That's good, and that's important, having a role model.
Yes.
I do believe. Yes. Elder Allen, what's your perspective on this?
I agree with the role model perspective as well. That was like my first thought. Of course, thinking about the parents. Parenting is different than it was. I had some old school parents. So, parenting back then is different from parenting now. It just seems like a whole lot today that the kids get away with doing that would make me cringe if I was to ever do that to my mother or my father. Like, I just knew what was going to happen if I had any type of disrespect or any type of thing going on. But being that the fact that I work in the school system, I see that almost all the time. And, that role model, it plays a big factor in it, of course, with the upbringing and where they're coming from, and just the fact that, it's the standards, like, especially when it comes to parenting, is not the same as it used to be. We have some people that they still hold to, what their mother and their father taught them, because they see the value and the standards and the morals that come with that. And it's different now. Like I just said, they just get away with a whole lot of stuff that I just know for a fact, if I was to ever do that, like, I just feel a whooping coming, and they don't even whoop me no more. So it's just one of those things that I feel is the important thing, that role model. And even if it was the single parent, like, my mother was a single mother and she raised me. Of course I had my father as well, but he wasn't as present. But my mother, she didn't make that as an excuse. She really made sure that I was around other men, you know, that would help shape me and mold me into the man I am today. Whether that's, you know, bringing me to church, connecting me with my grandfather, or either, you know, any other male that she trusted me to be with. All of those took like a factor, you know, in the man that I am today.
Okay. And you're a fine young man, may I say that? Inside and out. All right. Now, Elder Allen, you are also what I consider a young man. At what point did you
Wait a minute, I'm young.
Oh, yes, that's right. All right. And
I couldn't resist.
Chief William, yes, you're young too, but I think Jaylen is a little younger than the both of us.
He is.
All right. So, Minister Allen, at what point in your life did you realize that, hey, I have a calling or I want to be a minister?
This one, I realized, honestly, if I can be honest, I just realized it in school.
Okay.
Of course, that's not the time where I answered it, but I feel like that was the time that I realized it in school, because the way I thought was different. The way I behaved was different. The way I conducted myself was different. Of course, every now and then I did little stuff here and there, but overall, like, I did not fit in at all. I did not go with the wind. I was just an outcast. Even when I tried to fit in, it just didn't work. So I think, you know, when I was in school, that's when it really stood out. I would probably say it had to be around middle school when I realized it.
Wow.
But I didn't answer it until later on. Because, like, I know for me, I just wanted to, of course, you go through that time where, like, Lord, is this really what you want me to do? And so I went through some time with that and wrestling with it and running from it and finally submitting to it. So I would just say that would be the time that I realized it. But of course, didn't answer it until November the 13th, 2015.
Well, congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
All right. Now, I'm going to talk about the church a little bit. Elder Allen, we tend to see more women in church. Tell me why we don't see men as much.
Wow. That's a strong question. That's a good question. I feel like from that type of question, it just depends on like what a man values too. You know, a lot of men might be, okay, I'm going to do the game on Sunday. It's like, I'm going to do other things on Sunday. I feel like other things are important, you know, than going to church on Sunday. So I think it's a matter of priority. You know, some people just treat Sunday like it's a regular day. But you know, the fact that the women are in the church more, that's oh my gosh, that's an issue almost everywhere. So like, it does my heart well when there are like a lot of men within the church. Not the fact that all of them are in leadership, but just the fact that there are men in the church. And even eventually, sometimes, even if they're married, sometimes the woman is the person that pursues it first. They find Jesus first, and it takes the man some time. So they have to show that patience with him. However, don't beat him up at the side of the head just because he ain't going to church, or don't make him feel less of a man because he's not going to church. But it's one of those things where that patience has to come in, and those prayers have to come in, and then let the Lord deal with him. And then I'm pretty sure by the time the Lord keeps working on him and your prayers and you encouraging him, he'll be at the church one day.
He'll be there, huh?
He's going to be there one day. Like, you know, after a while, you know, he might just look at you and be like, okay, why do you act the way you act? Like, he might just have questions about the faith and why is it that, you know, you keep working the way you're working, and you keep doing the things you're doing, even when it gets difficult, when it gets hard. Like, where does that come from? So I think, you know, just the fact that, you know, that's a big thing, just as far as women being in the church, outnumbering men.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I have for right now.
All right. Chief Williams? one of the biggest issues that we have in the country right now is police brutality. Tell me why this is happening.
Well, because bad people put on uniforms. I mean,
Okay.
it's no secret. I tell people all the time, there's good and bad in every profession, right? There's good teachers,
Right.
there's bad teachers, there's good nurses, there's bad nurses, good doctors, bad doctors, even good preachers and bad preachers, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, my career field is one of those career fields that gets categorized by the mistakes of one person who could be in a completely different state, but because the uniform is the same, we get put in the same category, right?
Right.
The officers that work in my university do an excellent job interacting and engaging with the students to try to meet the overall mission of the department, which is to see them succeed and graduate, right?
Right.
And cut them a break. They're kids. Kids are going to make mistakes, and that's just what they do. Thank God somebody cut me a break and showed me some favor, and I'm here today. So, we look at it from that perspective, but bad people put this uniform on all the time. I will say that, traditional policing had to change too. We had to get rocked to the core to change. I remember when I first became a police chief and I was a young man, and I was sitting in a room full of older chiefs who were unwavering in their commitment not to change. And I remember just sitting back saying, boy, you guys are going to get washed over by a wave. And so, when we had Michael Brown and Freddie Gray and some of those things happen, you could see the wave coming. You could see the wave of anger of mispolicing coming for years. So when it finally happened, those individuals either decided to leave or they changed their thought process about change. And so we are a profession, right? And we had to professionalize. We had to change the way we do business, to change the way we do enforcement. We had to retool and refocus. We had to change our ideal, because when I came through the academy, you were taught to be a warrior. That wasn't quite how I thought policing should go, but that's what you were taught, right? And then you once you get out and you start policing, you can choose your own method of how you police. But policing should be a guardianship.
Yes.
Right, we're guardians of the community. It's not war. I'm not at war with my community. I'm there to protect and
Right.
serve that community and offer assistance where I can. And some of those things happen as a result of people just getting burned out on the job. Right, I've seen good police officers come to work and have a bad day. I seen a good officer at one point come to work. I know this person to be a good officer. Seen them do good work, right? But because of what's going on in their private life, personal life, that was unrecognized by the supervisor, they hit a moment where they snapped. And they had a bad moment, and they got to be held accountable for that bad moment. No one was injured, but they definitely did not follow the mission and protocol that we expect them to follow, and they had a bad moment. And I was having a conversation with a group about that situation one time, and I asked them, I said, how many of you guys have gone to work and had a bad day? And a lot of people had.
Yes.
And so I explained it. I said, yes, listen, what he did was not appropriate. What he said was not appropriate, but he had a bad day. He's not a bad officer. Is he going to be held accountable? Absolutely, because you can't come to work and have a bad day on somebody else.
Right.
So you get held accountable, but that doesn't mean the officer is racist. That doesn't mean the officer is biased. It means the officer is human and can have a bad day. Now, unfortunately, I knew what was going on in his life, and that would make almost anybody have a bad day.
I'm going to give you a house applause on that. And for those of you that are just listening in or tuning in, you are listening to Chat City with P. Ross on Oak 93.5 WRLY Raleigh. We have in the studio with us today Chief Damon Williams and Elder Jaylen Allen. All right. Thank you for that, Chief Williams. Now, I'm a woman of color, and I've been stopped for speeding and missing tail light. And lately, I've been nervous about stopping for police. And when I think about Sandra Bland and that story in Waller, Texas, she was arrested after a traffic stop. And then some time later, her family awarded, I think it was $1.9 million in a settlement for her death. I noticed in videos now that we have drivers that tend to badger the police when they stop, when they're stopped. Tell us what we are doing, tell us the rights that civilians or citizens have when it comes to officers that's making these traffic stops. And then I got another question for you after that.
So on a traffic stop, we teach kind of what to do on a traffic stop, right? When you stop by the police, I conduct all my traffic stops the same. I literally walk up to the car. Good afternoon, sir. Ma'am, I'm Officer Williams with whatever department I'm working with. Can I see your license and registration? A lot of times people will ask me, well, what'd you stop me for? I'll normally say something like this. Hey, listen, I'll tell you as soon as I get your driver's license, right? Now, if they become persistent and it starts to go kind of south, fine. I'm going to de-escalate it. So I call it taking away every excuse. So at that point, I'll just say, okay, I stopped you for speeding. Can I see your driver's license? You see what I'm saying? So, and if it's another excuse, I might go up to 3, give or take, but at some point in time, if you got stopped by the police and you're driving, you have to produce your driver's license. You don't have a choice. Driving is not a right; it's a privilege, right?
Right.
And so you don't have the right to refuse a lawful on a lawful traffic stop the right to produce your driver's license. You have to do that. You have a lot of rights when it comes to if a police officer is asking you to search your vehicle and they have no probable cause and reasonable suspicion, then you can refuse that right. You can say no. You can't search my car. Now if they have probable cause, for example, there's a smell of marijuana or there's an open container or all these other factors that play into reasonable suspicion and probable cause, then they can search your vehicle. If a canine has walked around your vehicle and alerted to your vehicle, they can search your vehicle. And so there are a lot of things that they can do and that we can do to search a vehicle that are legal, right? I always tell people, I'm not out there to try to violate anybody's rights. I'm out there to make sure the public is protected. I do find that even on a traffic stop now that people are a lot more belligerent and angry for some reason.
Right.
And I'm like, well, we just met.
Right.
And so we just met. So I don't know. Well, do you know what that officer did? I don't know what the officer in Richmond, Virginia did to you, but ma'am, I'm not going to do that to you. I just need to see your driver's license. This is going to be a simple traffic stop. I just need you to change your behavior, but I do need to check and see who you are and make sure that everything is valid. And once I do that, a lot of times I'll write a warning. I'm not a big ticket writer. I'm not that guy. Now I got some young guys who they full of vinegar. They can't wait to go out there and enforce some traffic. And that does serve a purpose, right? When you've been to some of the accident scenes that I've been to, you do want to mitigate traffic. You do want to find ways to get people to drive safer. And so experiences changes officers and their perception of how to do the job as well. But you have a lot of rights. I always tell people, listen, it's about mutual respect on a traffic stop, right? An officer should not be disrespectful to you, should not be angry, it should not be personal. It's a duty to educate the person that is been stopped, and that education can come from a warning, it can come from a citation, and it can, so those are things that can happen on a traffic stop.
Yeah.
But I will say this, let me caveat this though.
Yes.
If you feel like you've been on a traffic stop that was inappropriate, you should always report that to the police department. Because if an officer has a history of complaints that all lead in the same direction, that is a pattern that the chief of police needs to know about so that he can address that officer and address that behavior appropriately.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I just, when I watch some of these videos, I cringe sometimes, not because I'm watching the attitude of the driver or the person being stopped, and I'm like, it really doesn't have to play out like this. Just show them your driver's license, especially if, if you don't have anything to hide. Just let them check the license and you go on your merry way. However, I do, like I said, now I have that little bit of nervousness when I do stop.
Well, I mean, I've even had people tell me, I know I was speeding. I know I was going way too fast. Well, can I see your driver's license then? Why we still arguing about it? I mean, I don't want to argue with you about it. I'm even willing to give you a warning. Can I see your driver's license? But it does come to a point where I may say, listen, if I don't get your driver's license, you're going to be placed under arrest. And once I say you are under arrest, there is no going back. At that point, you are going with me. We're going down to the magistrate's office. That can involve an altercation of some type if you refuse at that point, because you don't have the right to refuse a lawful arrest.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I invited you to the show too, Chief Williams, because I guess I want to help this situation here, go over smoothly. We don't want to see any more, this type thing where people getting arrested when they don't have to. It's simple. If you don't commit a crime, you won't do any time or whatever, or you won't get stopped. But there are times when we do get stopped for simple things like a tail light out or something like that. So, I just don't want to see the tragedy on either side, form. And so, again, that's why we have you here to help us with this. Okay. All right. Now, we do see seem like more men of color being stopped and chased and killed by police. I know that, as I said earlier, if you choose not a life of crime, you wouldn't have a problem. The internet, though, has so many videos of police shooting people in the back or in situations, some lawfully, sometimes not. And you've spoken to that, but is there anything else you could say to help us on these situations here?
I tell people to comply and complain. While you're out there, you want to survive an encounter, of any type. And I will say this, I'm gonna speak up. I wasn't one of those people who wanted to become a police officer. Matter of fact, my opinion about police was completely opposite of what most people would think it was. I was not a person who liked the police. I didn't think very much of the police at all before I became a police officer. Through my years of going through criminal justice, I was an avid police hater, actually. I would define myself. I was pretty vocal about my disdain for police, right, because of what I saw in my hometown of Baltimore and so on and so forth. But I will say this: in a situation on the side of the road, if you're asked for something from an officer, comply. You have every right to complain. You have every right to ask questions. But at the end of the moment, you need to comply. The mutual respect is real. The majority of the people that wear this uniform and wear this badge and these symbols do put them on every day with honor. I know a lot of good people I work with. And don't get me wrong, I work with some bad ones too. I've been privileged as a chief to fire some bad ones. So, I will say, but the majority of the guys and ladies that put on this uniform every day, they do put it on every morning with the intention of go out and doing something good, right? Yes. We encounter people at their worst moment over and over and over again, and it does have its effect on you. So I just tell people, comply on the side of the road. If you think you've been mistreated, complain, because we take all those complaints very seriously.
Okay, comply and complain.
That's right.
Let's remember that. All right. If you're just tuning in, we have Chief Damon Williams, and Elder Jaylen Allen with us on Chat City, Oak 93.5. I'm your host, P. Ross. All right. If you have any questions for either of these two, feel free to call into the show. Our number here is 919-899-9305. Elder Allen. So many young men are choosing to turn to a life of selling drugs versus figuring out what their passions are and making a good career choice instead. An honest, decent income. How do you minister to young men? What do you say to them? And what message can you give to them for a life-changing experience in the other direction?
Well, I think for those type of people, you just have to come at them differently. That's the main thing about being a minister, not even just minister, just being a believer and being a Christian. You have to come at them differently, because they will only respect you because of the approach that you give them. They'll only respect you because of that. So if you come at them very judgmental of who they are, very, very judgmental of what they're wearing, how they smell, how they speak, or anything of that, like, a lot of times they are not going to receive the message that you have at all. Even if it is positive, they're not going to receive that. So a lot of times, even when I talk to people like that or minister to people like that, I have to meet them at the level that they are and then try to bring them up. However, that's not something that's going to happen in a day. That's not, like, it's a process for certain people, and I understand that. But I feel like certain people don't understand that it's a process for people, and they just think it can just happen quickly. So as far as that, it's all about approach. How are you talking to them? Sometimes you have to find out what they really like. You have to find out why they like what they like, or why they do what they do. Don't come at them like, of course, with a list full of questions. But, even though, say, for instance, if they're playing a whole lot of music, and of course they got a whole lot of language in it, of course I don't condone it. However, like, it will give you an understanding of how they think. It'll give you an understanding of, how they process things. Or if, you decide to, visit their neighborhood or something like that, that gives you more of an insight or an understanding of who they are. So a lot of times the difference is we equate what people do with who they are. Like, just because a person sells drugs doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person at all. They just make a bad decision. Like he was just saying, they just have a bad moment. And some of them, they just made that decision because it was quick. Some of them have a struggle, and some of it is like, it's a hustle. It's got to happen quick. So it's different reasons for everybody. So I know as far as that, it's all about how you approach that person, and are you being loyal to them? Because they're loyal to the streets. So like, that's a whole nother thing. Like, you got to make sure that your loyalty and everything that you say you're going to do, that you're doing what you say you're going to do regarding them. So once you do that, that's when you'll realize, I mean, it takes time, and sometimes they just might run a little bit, but they'll come back, especially if they know that you're that type of person that they can call on. So, and that can be a start as well. Just knowing that you can be that person that they can call on where, hey, look, I got into some trouble. Can I call you at 1 o'clock in the morning? Can I call you at 2 o'clock? Are you going to come? Are you going to just dust me off because it's too late? Like, those are the things that they kind of look forward to. Like, are you really going to be there for them? Because if you say those type of words, they are going to test that. They're really going to test that. So I just think it's all about the approach, and we just have to show them something different and show them something better. Other than that's positive, of course, that can get them off the streets. They can get them out of the jail cells. They can just get them on their path that the God called them to be upon. So that's my take on that.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you for that. Chief Williams, you're on the campus of North Carolina Central University.
The illustrious North
Illustrious
North Carolina Central. That's right.
Okay, you're also a graduate of Fayetteville State
That's
University.
right. The illustrious Fayetteville State.
Okay, I'm holding my breath over here. All right. All right. But I've looked at your social media pages, and I know the students adore you. They love you. And you seem like you have a good rapport with them. I see that you were awarded a certificate of appreciation by a student.
Yes.
All right, you get a house applause for that.
Congratulations.
Congratulations on that. And, as an officer around students who've chosen education, higher learning, and have set their paths in a better way of life, hoping for a better way of life and the American dream, health, wealth, making dreams come true. How can we steer other young men and women who may not have the same opportunities and exposures to higher education and positive lifestyles and influence? How do we set them in the right direction?
I think we got to first determine whether or not higher education is something for them.
Okay.
Right. And, you know, I do believe that higher education is not for everybody. Some people, it's just not their path. Right. Everybody can't be shepherded down the same path. Right. And so we got to identify what's right for them. That's where trade schools come in. That's where, you know, I do believe, you know, as a former educator, I believe that education is the key to success. My motto is it doesn't guarantee you success, but it is the key to the door. It's up to that person to put the key in the door and walk through. But we got to find the right door. So if I identify somebody who works well with their hands, maybe I start showing them and telling them about automotive or welding or plumbing or HVAC or something that helps them get some type of trade where they can have a good living, a good life, and provide for their family, right? And provide for themselves and their future. So it's about finding the right opportunity. For those whose opportunity is the 4-year path, we just need to bring them to campus. We need to get the resources that can help them afford to come to our campus in front of them. And that's why we do the programs at North Carolina Central University that we do. When we bring students in to let them see the environment, when we invite them to the football games, that's a draw to get them in to say, hey, look, hey, this is Mr. Bailey. He's the director of admissions. I know you talked about going to school. These are some of the things that he can talk to you about, and stay in contact with him. I had a student at our university who said they wanted to major in law. And everybody knows we just lost our dean at the law school. She passed away, unfortunately. But one thing I loved about Dean Lewis is, and that was my buddy, and I'm telling you, that thing hit me hard. But one thing I loved about her is if a student said they wanted to go into law, I could always take them to her office, and she would, no matter what was going on, would take time, 30, 45 minutes and just start talking about why they should come to to the law school. And so people like that change lives, right? People like that make people want to come back because you make them feel invited into this process. So we're all there to support our students now. I'm gonna tell you right now, I love my students now.
Yes.
And we are there to support them and make sure that they achieve their ultimate goal. They are going to fall down sometimes. It ain't my job to kick them while they're down. Right. It's my job to offer the hand down and help them back up. Now, sometimes that comes with a consequence. You know, my mother spanked me plenty of days, right? Yeah. Didn't mean she didn't. Didn't mean she didn't love you, right?
Right.
Okay, but one thing she would say to me is, "You got to deal with your consequences, boy. Don't mean it's over. It's the end of the day for you." And I tell students that too. So we use diversion programs at our university, where we, instead of sending them downtown to the magistrate's office, we may send them to the dean's office so they can redeem themselves. And so it's about putting the right door in front of the right person to make sure they can be successful.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Elder Allen, I don't know if you've ever had any experience with anyone that's been incarcerated. If you did, or if you have, what words of wisdom would you give to them?
As far as a person being incarcerated, I've actually dealt with that maybe a little bit less than 5 times. It's a hard feel. I know the first day that I've had to deal with it, it was hard because like I felt like I'm really young and I'm experiencing something like this already. And that can put me in that put me in a very hard place. But just as Jesus did, always choose love. Always choose love. That person that's incarcerated wants to know, do you love them despite the decision that they made? Do you love them where they are, while they are behind bars? Do you love them enough to keep checking on them? Do you love them enough to help them out? Or maybe even try to help them, get out or whatever. But however, there's still going to be a talk between this, So it's just about that love factor has to be in it, because you never know the mindset that they were in when they did what they did.
That's right.
And sometimes it's really when you stand still that you get to realize a lot of stuff. You realize, oh, I could have made this decision instead of that decision. But it was in the heat of the moment, they was reacting quickly. So, and being at the fact we have to humble ourselves so we can make those type of decisions too. And a lot of people don't think about it. Like, that could be you behind bars. Or better yet, you could have been the person that got away with it. But you just didn't get caught. So thinking about it from that standpoint, from those that are behind bars, I would just say, definitely don't define yourself as the mistake you made. Don't define yourself as the decision that you made. There's still a purpose on your life. There's still a calling on your life. And just because you're behind bars doesn't mean that it can't happen. There's a lot of people that still work while they're still in prison, believe it or not. A lot of us maybe know, so they're rappers, they still work on their stuff. So that way when they come out, they already got albums lined up. Right. Because they've been working even while they were behind bars. So even if they can take that time to really work on what they're called to do, work on what enlightens them, work on their gifts when they discover it. And that way, when God does open that door, that they'll be able to walk through, they'll be able to manifest, they'll be able to prosper with it. So that's what I would say to the people that are behind bars. You are not your mistake. You are not your bad decision. You are not your sin. You are still God's child. God still loves you. Jesus knew you was going to do it. Jesus died for all of that. So all of that is paid for. So at the end of the day, we just have to really realize that, hey, look, once we figure out who we are, we can be who God called us to be.
Amen. For those of you that are just tuning in, you are listening to Chat City with P. Ross on Oak 93.5 WRLY Raleigh, North Carolina. We have in the building with us today Chief Damon Williams and Elder Jaylen Allen. If you have any questions for these gentlemen, feel free to give us a call. Call into the station, 919-899-9305. They'll be happy to answer any of your questions. So will I. All right, moving right along. Elder Allen, is it tough being a minister?
Yes. Yes.
How so?
I would say a lot of it is because at the end of the day, I'm still human. And once again, people still hold you to that standard. They hold you to that standard. Like, a lot of times, I want to go off too. A lot of times, I want to lose it. A lot of times, I want to say something back. But, like, in this, even in all of that, there's a stillness. Jaylen, you can't do that. You can't go off. You can't cut them off. I know they said what they said about you, but you got to keep your mouth shut and don't say nothing. And that is a hard thing to do, especially when you know you got the right thing to say back to someone. But I would say that's the hard part, when people hold you to the standard and they already have an expectation that, oh, you supposed to love. Oh, you ain't supposed to judge. You're not supposed to do this, or you're not supposed to do that. You supposed to, they have all of these standards for preachers and stuff like that. So that is what I would say is the hard part, is that battle between my flesh. And am I going to act in my flesh today, or am I going to walk in faith? Am I going to turn away? Am I going to let it go? Am I going to let it slide? Or am I going to say something about it today? So I would say that would be like my biggest challenge of being that, as far as the battle between the both, because it's a lot of human stuff, to be honest, as preachers, that we want to do that we just can't do. We can't do. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad things, but if you saw us somewhere and we can just be enjoying ourselves, what you doing here? You're supposed to be in church. You're supposed to have Bible study. Like, what are you doing here? So, even when it comes to enjoying ourselves, like, we can't, it almost like we got to enjoy ourselves with discretion. Like, we got to be watchful over everything and everybody that's with us. So, that way anything that we're doing doesn't get taken the wrong way. It's not taken out of context. It's not taken as, oh, he's not a man of God. I saw him do this. He's like, it's so much standards and even judgment, even upon the preacher, the minister, apostle, bishop, or whoever they may be. So that's the main thing that's hard as far as that. Everything we got to do is very on a tight leash.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. And Chief Williams,
Yes.
we know that your line of work can be dangerous. And again, we appreciate you and your service to this country, to your city, to your community. Tell us some of the pros to being a police officer.
So there are a lot of pros, right? So, and I'm sure the minister can relate to some of this. It's a tough job, but you know what? Those moments where you really get to help somebody and change somebody's life, the moment, like when you mentioned a little earlier, the student with the certificate of appreciation, that rocked me to my core. Watching some of the students that I know we have given that second opportunity to walk across that stage, after being given that second chance, completely makes all this worth it, right? The prevention and saving someone's life, the prevention of someone becoming harmed, are all fulfilling things that make this job absolutely worthwhile. So there's some good and bad in this job. Of course, you deal with people at their worst, but you also get to see people at their best. Yeah. And so I think that's what makes the job fulfilling.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Elder Allen, you've had you've got several speaking engagements, and you seem to be a sought-after preacher. Tell us more about your program, JAM, Jaylen Allen Ministries, how it was formed, and what you do.
Well, Jaylen Allen Ministries pretty much came after I had served after the campus ministry at Central. That they laid me off. My brother was not feeling good about that because it was a good job. I enjoyed what I did and everything, but I just knew then it was like, okay, it was time for something different. It was time for something new. So even though I'm grateful for everything that I've learned there, everything that I've grown there, however, there was another level that God wanted to take me. So that's when Jaylen Allen Ministry started to get more established and getting our paperwork done and websites and everything like that. So what we are is it's a ministry basically for millennials. A lot of times it's hard to find a church just for us. It's hard. It's because either they're very, very old school, which is nothing wrong with the old school because I relate to them. But it's a different thing when it comes to a millennial because they're like, where do I connect with? Like, it's not that they don't want to go to church. They want to go to church, but there's nothing in church that really pulls them. It's nothing there that really grabs them or reaches them or really enlightens them to the point, hey, look, I want to go to church this Sunday. I will be there. So that's why Jaylen Allen Ministries was formed and created, because just for millennials, so we can have those Bible discussions and we can use the things that they do from the world and kind of make it biblical and just twist it and just work it for how it works in our faith.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I'm just curious. I'm chiming in. I'm old school. I'm old school. I'm not old school, but I grew up. What I'm saying is, I grew up in an old school church, right? I'm Kojic. I grew up in the Church of God in Christ, and I know, is it because that the millennials or younger? I found younger ministers are less judgmental. Then what happens in the black church. You go to church and everybody don't have the right thing. They're going, they whispering in the corner. So is that? Tell me why you think that is. I'm just curious.
Why that?
Why millennials aren't flocking to the church anymore?
I just think it's something. It has to be something about a church that really pulls them. Like I would say, I would relate it to how it is. You left the church and that church was no longer for you. And you go through a season where you're trying to find the right church that really speaks to you, that really understands you, that may even have something that you can do and that you can serve with. And that's another win right there. When they know that they can serve somewhere and serve freely and be who they're called to be without being judged, oh, you got them. Because, like, say for instance, if they like to dance, if your church does not have a dance ministry, if you let them create that dance ministry, you don't know what kind of doors that might open for that church. Or like if somebody is miming and you don't have a mime ministry and you let them do that, you never know how many people might bring to your church just for them doing that ministry. So it's all about, is this a church I can be free in? Is this a church that, are they a little bit too judgmental? And sometimes that can happen as soon as they walk in the door. They can feel like they might just walk in the door and be like, oh, this is definitely not the church. This is definitely not the church. They might stay for the service or they might just turn around and walk back out. So yeah, that would be my take on, that's probably why that, it's hard for the millennials to really connect. And even with the younger preachers, I know for me, what works better for me to connect with them is to even share with them where I had the same struggle in. And a lot of times that preachers don't really do that too much, or they're only going to reveal a certain part of their testimony, the only part that they want you to know. That's it. And then we going to praise God for that. But you're not going to tell nobody how deep you was in it for real. So a lot of times when you connect with millennials like that, and they know, oh my God, this man is preaching, but he had the same problem I got, and God brought him out. I know for a fact that God can do the same thing with me, but just the fact that he's honest about it, like, and that's a whole nother thing. Like, people aren't honest about that, and that's what we do. We have our Bible discussions called Transparent Talk Thursdays, and that is our Bible discussion that we have, and we spill it all out there. We spill it all out. Now, they don't cuss or nothing on there, but that's an area where they can get, how they feel out, whether they have thoughts, opinions, suggestions about anything, even regarding the lesson. How did the lesson challenge them? What challenges did they have? What struggles did they have? What issues did they have? We've had people really cry and really be free on that platform.
And I think that's where the difference come in. The old school church didn't offer those type things.
Right.
Something you see different now in the millennial church, so to speak. You see a lot more what I call entertainment. Back in the old school church, you got singing and you got singing and preaching, and that's pretty much it.
Right.
And you didn't get any counseling. All right. In the millennial church, we offer counseling, we offer entertainment, a form of entertainment.
Right.
And along with preaching. So I think that's where the draw is for the younger population when it comes to finding a church that they want to become members at. And they tend to shy away from the churches that you and I may have grew up in, Chief Williams, as far as, the denomination, Church of God in Christ, and some of the others that are similar. So I think that's where that comes in. We're getting close to the top of the hour. I want to mention that Chief Williams, you were also inaugurated into the office of president of the North Carolina Association of Chief of Police. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I want to give you a house applause on that. And I believe that you're focused on police reforms and promoting positive perspectives of the profession.
That's correct.
Of law enforcement. What advice or what would you say to one who is considering going into the same field that you're in? Is there a shortage of police and you want to do some more recruiting, or what advice do you have? Oh yeah,
there's definitely a shortage, right? People aren't coming into this field anymore because we are getting beaten down right now. We are getting beat down, but the profession itself is trying to change, right? We are trying to eliminate bad apples who are wearing this uniform, and we are trying to modernize and come into the 21st century, new policing models and styles. You got a lot younger police chiefs taking over departments and bringing in great innovative policing, 21st century policing ideas. So we're getting there, right? We're professionalizing. The diversity has grown in the profession. And, taking in North Carolina, most of our major cities are operated either by female police chiefs or minority police chiefs. So North Carolina is leading the way in those areas. We don't have a predatory style of policing in North Carolina. I think what confuses people about this profession is that every state is different, right? You go across the line to Virginia or over to Missouri or South Carolina, and they have a different style of policing than we have, right? We don't utilize our citizens as a method of payment. We only use those tickets and citations as a form of education and behavior change, right? And so when people say, oh, you're going to get a kickback from that ticket. No, I don't get anything. Now that money goes to the administrative office of the courts and then flows into the court system and into our school system. So there's no motivation for me to write a ticket other than changing your behavior. If I stop you because your child was not in a seatbelt or your child was not properly restrained, it's probably because I want to change your behavior. Or because I've gone to an accident scene where I've seen a child ejected through a windshield. That is not something you want to see, and it's something that I cannot unsee. So, those things change the way you police. But I tell people all the time, we need good people with good heart. So, the old days of somebody coming in looking like a Marine and that's just the look that we want, that ain't it no more. Right. I've hired people who, some people would say, oh, he's too big to be a police officer. Yet, that same man can talk a gun out of anybody's hand. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm not going to utilize him to go chasing a 21-year-old. However, I'm hiring 21-year-old to go chase 21-year-olds. Right. But I'm utilizing that man for his compassion, his empathy, his heart, his mind, and so on and so forth, and to have a good mixture and diversity of people. I encourage more females to come into this field. I encourage more minorities, more Hispanics, more African Americans to join the policing field. You know how you change policing? You change it from the inside. You know how I've been able to change policing? I've been a police chief, right? I'm on the inside, changing those policies from the inside. North Carolina Central just went through a complete rewrite of their general orders and policies to ensure that we were in line with 21st century policing. And so that's the way you change the profession. You get good people in this profession, and you get the bad people out.
That's awesome. I recently viewed a video of a male. He was around age 35 to 40 years of age. And he was ranting about a 14-year-old female in her attire. Her booty was out, form-fitting clothes. He said the parents are accountable for letting her dress this way. He said that older men hunt and are attracted to this kind of wear. In an adjoining frame to the same video, a younger man appears, and he calls the ranting and raving of this older gentleman he referred to him as being a predator, and it's disgusting. He also mentioned that he should have better self-control. What is that? What is your take on that, Elder Allen?
Wow. That's a lot. I haven't heard about that one.
But make it quick, because we're at the top of the hour. We're going to have to do another show, a part 2.
Okay. Yeah, I think, as far as that's almost differently, if something different was supposed to happen, I don't think, once again, she was 14, correct?
14, yes.
Yeah, like I said earlier, sometimes parenting is different. It's very, very different. Certain things, as you know, you wouldn't go out of mama's house wearing that at all. But the parenting styles have been different. I don't really, of course, I wouldn't condone it, because if I had a daughter, she's definitely not going outside the house looking like that. So I just think it's a different timing when it comes to that. However, you should be able to lovingly tell a person if something is wrong. Okay, if something is wrong, cover her up, or get a woman to talk to her about that. And just stay. If it was the fellas, just handle the fella stuff. But if you knew somebody that was compassionate enough and caring enough to really show her the way, then that's the person that you seeing, instead of making a whole video judging her because of what she's wearing.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we are fastly approaching the top of the hour. I have so many more questions. Go ahead, Chief.
Can I add something to that real quick?
Sure.
So I got a 14-year-old daughter, and my 14-year-old daughter wants to be an individual, right?
Yes.
But we've also rooted certain things and taught her certain things, right? And I'm also a police officer, and I know that there are predators out there. There are people out there, and so I have to protect my daughter and teach her and tell her and have this conversation with her, not to stop her individuality, but to let her know that there are people out there who are predators and who do prey on that type of behavior, or that type of dress, right? So just be mindful of that. But I also have a standard for her to uphold in my household, and that hey, listen, you're not meeting the standard right now. We got to talk about this. I'm not saying you can't be an individual, but we do have a standard, and we do want you to understand certain things and certain aspects about the way you go outside. But the same rules apply to my son.
Right.
My son ain't going outside with his pants around his ankles,
right?
Pants sagging below his butt cheeks. He ain't going outside, and he just looks disorganized and disheveled. I had the same conversation with him. So I think we have to understand it's not just about our young ladies, because they do have a sense of individualism, but it's about our millennial itself. Back when we were young, I'm sure some of the stuff that we wore, back. I know you remember this cross colors, wearing your jeans backwards. My mother thought I was insane. So, same kind of stuff. But she sat me down. She said, "Boy, you're not going out my house looking like that. Turn your pants around, put them on right, yada yada yada." So I take the same approach to that discussion.
Okay, thank you, Chief Williams.
Yes.
Your what words would you have for a man who has abandoned his family?
A man who's abandoned his family?
Yes.
You made
Here at Father's Day.
You made the wrong decision.
Okay.
I can tell you that right now. So being a father is very rewarding, right? Oh, it's tough. It's tough some days. I got 2 daughters and I got a son, and they all drive me they all teenagers now. They all get into that teen age, right? So they driving me into a new area. But the most days are so fulfilling. You know what I'm saying? Most days are so rewarding. And so if you've abandoned your family, your child, you have made a grave error. And as quickly as you can repair that error, you should do so. because you are going to miss out on some of the best gifts that God has given you, number one. And you can detrimentally change the outcome of your child's future by not being there.
All right. Thank you. Minister Allen, Elder Allen, real quickly, you're a new father. What words do you have for a man who has abandoned his family?
As the father or the son?
As a father.
As the father?
Yes.
Okay. As the father, I would just say it's you don't have too much time. You got to make it right with the family. You are pretty much the head of the household, so you leaving the family, and the family needs the male there. So being there is really majority of it, as far as instilling the principles, instilling the morals, the values, and the standards. So I would just say, like, even if it's an issue or whatever, just forgive. Forgiveness repairs it. Forgive them, forgive yourself, and just be able to restore as a family and as a unit.
Amen. All right, that's the end of our show. We thank you for listening and tuning in to to Chat City on Oak 93.5. I've been your host, P. Ross, and again, thank you, Chief Damon Williams and Elder Jaylen Allen, for being a part of our show. Happy Father's Day to all you fathers, and happy Juneteenth.
Community Radio, WRLYLP, Raleigh.
From Feature Story News in Washington, D.C., I'm Benji Haya. America's democracy came dangerously close to catastrophe during the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th last year, according to the Congressional Committee investigating the insurrection. In the third of a series of hearings, lawmakers on Thursday also highlighted what they claimed was Donald Trump's relentless effort to pressure then Vice President Mike Pence to refuse to count the Electoral College votes and instead declare Mr. Trump the winner of the 2020 election as his supporters stormed the halls of Congress. Mike Pence's former advisor, Judge Michael Luttig, says doing so would have caused a constitutional crisis.
Had Vice President Pence obeyed the orders from his president, that would have been tantamount to a revolution.
Donald Trump, who peddled the false allegation that the election was stolen from him, insists this investigation is a pitiful, last-ditch effort to deceive the American public. Meanwhile, the leaders of the European Union's three largest economies are backing Ukraine's bid to become a candidate for EU membership. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi were in Kiev and Irpin on Thursday for talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, as our Europe correspondent Rosie Burchard reports.
Ukraine has been lobbying hard to convince the European Union that it deserves a seat at the 27-member bloc's table. President Zelensky says Ukrainian troops have been fighting to defend European values and argues a green light from Brussels would offer a major morale boost for citizens and soldiers alike. On Friday, the European Commission is expected to recommend Ukraine be granted candidate status, but with conditions. Then it will be over to EU leaders to make up their mind at a summit in Brussels next week. While Ukraine can now officially count on the backing of political heavyweights France, Germany and Italy, as well as several other Baltic and Eastern European countries that have publicly expressed support, some EU members are more hesitant. Joining the European Union is a process which can take years or decades and involves significant reform.